Hi, welcome to another episode of Coffee and HEMA with me, Jamie McKeever. Today, I want to talk about why you can't read too much into successful or unsuccessful tournaments, and related to that, sort of what your HEMA ratings actually means. The first part of that is slightly inspired by my recent success at the Wolfcall tournament. I came back with 2 gold medals, which is a first for me. And in one sense, it's the absolute best tournament performance I've ever had. I didn't lose a match in either of the 2 tournaments I did. I have gold medals before, but I've lost matches in those in the pool stages, or drawn matches at the very least. So in one sense, it's my best tournament performance ever. And in the other sense, I did okay. And what I mean by did okay, 2 goals is clearly more than okay. I'd come off the back of a fairly long training break. Wolfcall was, it's normally a fairly mid-level tournament. It was a bit lower than that this year. Well, it's normally a mid to high level. It's got a few decent UK fences in, but it's very much a national tournament. But because last weekend the London HEMA Open ran for its inaugural thing, and London HEMA Open was published first, and it was a bigger tournament, most of the top UK fences were going to London HEMA tournament. And particularly the ones that had to travel for both, they decided, you know what, I don't want to travel 2 weeks on the trot, I'm going to go to London HEMA Open. I wasn't at London HEMA Open, despite it being up the street from me, because it was my wife's birthday. So I went to Lincoln. And the level, there were some great fences in there. I don't want to disparage my opponents, but you didn't have most of the sort of the top UK fences that you'd normally see 3 or 4 of in a given tournament. And if you looked at my opponent's HEMA ratings, which is what I'll come back to, probably the highest HEMA rating, apart from me, was low 1400s, high 1300s, which is not a bad HEMA rating at all, right? Mine is 1700, just shy of 1700. I think it's gone down because I haven't competed until Wolfcall for a little while. As a result, less so for non-longsword, but at least in longsword, it's a fairly substantial gap in rating. The reverse happens to be true as well, right? So my first few tournaments were all Swordfish. So for a very long time, my HEMA rating was really, really low. It was like 800-900 because I was getting mostly losses and a win or two, and looked bad, right? But Swordfish was one of the hardest tournaments in the world, and this was before HEMA ratings was really a thing. In fact, my first HEMA ratings were kind of post-fact, like a couple of years where HEMA ratings opened after I'd done 2 or 3 tournaments, and both of those they were all submitted. The tournament performance showed me that I was losing, and nonetheless, the difference between my first tournament and my second tournament, actually, this is a great example for it, which you can go see if you really want to. Both videos are online. I performed pretty much the same, right? I had 1 win and 4 losses, but the difference in my fencing between the 2 was a astronomical difference. And I look back at my first one, kind of fingers between my eyes, not really wanting to see because it's pretty abysmal. And if I see matches from the second one, already I can see, I'm not saying I fenced flawlessly, but I can see some of the stuff that becomes later kind of bread and butter for me starting to take effect. And, it's decent fencing. It's not the world's best fencing, but, I look at it like, oh yeah, I can see there's good stuff there, young Jamie. And this is really part of the problem of taking the sort of the binary results of a tournament to make a judgment on how well you have progressed, how good you are, or how good someone is, and whether things kind of are going well. Because the tournament is made up of not just your tournament performance is not made up just of your skill and what you did well and all this kind of stuff, but also your opponents, how well you slept, right? How well you managed to get to the tournament. Like if it's close by and easy to get to, you're probably going to be performing better than one which is you arrived at 4 a.m. the day before and had 2 hours sleep before you were on the piste. Don't know if I start at 6 a.m., but you know what I mean. As a result, you need to look beyond just did I win, did I lose, or even how well did how close a win was it, how close a loss was it. to get a sense for whether you have progressed as a tournament fencer, between one tournament and the other. Which brings me on to HEMA ratings, right? What HEMA ratings is and HEMA ratings isn't. And HEMA ratings is actually, it's a really useful tool, particularly for organizers, right? If you don't know, you get a rating based upon your tournament results. Roughly speaking, you win a tournament fight, you gain some points from your opponent. You lose a tournament fight, you lose some points to your opponent, and it's proportional to what your rating is. So me beating someone who's really low rated will go up slightly. Me beating someone who's really high rated will go up loads. Me losing to someone low rated will go down loads, right? Or it's a bit more complicated than that. My rating's pretty stable now because I've got about 400 fights, so one loss isn't going to change it by much, no matter what, or not all one win. And it is a good measure for how you have performed in a tournament, the results. And how you perform in a tournament is, in general, an okay measure of how you will perform in the next tournament, assuming that they are the similar kind of difficulty level. And fundamentally, the problem is that you will always go up for winning a fight, and you will always go down for losing a fight. How much will depend on lots of factors. But you could be having a high HEMA rating because you've only won fights in relatively small tournaments, like the one I just talked about. If that was the only kind of event that you did, right? If you never traveled beyond that, there's only kind of event you did, and they were all kind of that kind of level, you would end up, you do 3 or 4 of them, you'd end up with a high HEMA rating. You'd end up easily in the 1600s, maybe higher, right? Assuming you won all the fights, but you would not have to be, as good a fencer as somebody who's getting to, say, the quarterfinals, right, of a Dutch Lions Cup, which is a much harder tournament. So whenever you're thinking about your tournament performance, you think about, well, who did I fence, right? Did I fence the top fencers in the world? Did I fence people who were just going along for their first tournament? And it's worth, and I would say this goes in both directions, right? This isn't just about looking for the best challenge. This is about looking for the right challenge for you. So if you're relatively new, and I say this to somebody who did this, picking a Dutch Lions Cup for your first tournament is not necessarily a wise plan. Especially these days, we have a lot more tournaments than we did when I started. There are beginners tournaments, there are kind of mid-level tournaments, and picking something like that for your first tournament is a good idea, because you'll get people who are similar in level to you. You may get some people who are, more experienced than you. 1 or 2 people more experienced than you is a good idea to fence. But going into a pool where you're brand new and everybody else has got on their 50th tournament, it's kind of disheartening. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because you're not going to be getting meaningful stretching challenges. So to wrap all that up, really, HEMA ratings, fantastic tool for what it's good for. Don't read too much into it. People's HEMA ratings can be massively inflated because they use small tournaments. They can be massively deflated because they've been consistently punching up their weight, and because, as I've bitched about before, the ratings combined with the seeding system is kind of unfair to people who are low rated. It kind of presses them down by design. And ultimately, if you try to decide whether you're improving as a fencer or whether someone's good as a fencer, HEMA ratings is a bad tool for that. What HEMA ratings is good for is organizers understanding past tournament performance to make decisions about seeding. That's kind of it. You can also use it to get its general sense for the level of a tournament, right? Are you going into a tournament that is going to be really tough or really hard? Sean Franklin did a good article on how to assess sort of difficulty of a tournament based upon HEMA ratings. I'll link it in the description. Go check it out. And honestly, if you want to know how well you're progressing as a tournament fencer, the best way of doing it, film your fights, watch back. You will get a much better sense for how you fenced by actually seeing it from the outside than you ever will from just either the tournament results, HEMA ratings, rise or fall or anything like that. Watch your fencing, see what it looked like, and actually there you'll be able to see, oh, that was good, that was bad, in a way that you just wouldn't be able to from any kind of blunt instrument of results or ratings. Thanks for watching.